Hello and welcome to the Saturday MP show, episode number 90. Oh, what was it? 94, being recorded mostly live, April 25th, 2026. This is a show, at least today, about passkeys, where we have a special guest, Aaron, on to discuss passkeys and tell me why they're so cool and explain to me why I should use them more. Because personally, I just find them really confusing and hard to set up. At least it's easier now that I have a password manager that supports them. So I think Aaron will go over some of that. But when they first came out, I was really confused about how to use them. And then because they were tied to like your operating system or something at the time, and it just confused the heck out of me. So I don't know if they'll gain widespread use anytime soon until they fix those UI issues. But maybe Aaron can elaborate on that and tell us when we'll all start using them and like the best and easiest way to use them there. So so thanks Aaron for joining us. I know you have an introduction slide, so do you want to just jump right into your presentation here, or do you want to introduce yourself a little bit there first? Go ahead.
Sure.
I'll put the floor over to you, and then after your presentation I'll probably ask you some questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris, first of all, for inviting me onto Saturday MP. I will do my best to make your editing efforts not too onerous here.
Yeah, remember, it's mostly live. I barely edit anything, so because I'm lazy, and I also want people to see mistakes too as well. So
Yeah, it's
but
only a mistake if you don't learn from it. So that's been my philosophy. So with
but I've
that
learned,
said,
yeah, I think we've both learned lots about throughout the years. Okay, I'll be
yeah.
quiet now. You can go ahead.
No. Oh, that's okay. Thanks, Chris. So just a little bit about me. My name is Aaron Yong. I graduated from the University of Alberta in 2014, and I have been a part of the local tech scene ever since. I like to say to a lot of people, because I find it very hard to describe myself, I also don't really like to talk about myself, to be honest. I just like to say that I do love solving problems in a digital space. And so about 3 years ago, I decided to form my own software and leadership consulting firm called Saikyo Softworks. And when I'm not trying to grow my business and make sure that I deliver, high quality software and great user experiences for my clients, I do go skiing sometimes. If anyone knows what it looks like outside, I maybe could probably go cross country skiing right now if I wanted to. I watch hockey, and sometimes I play Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, did the Oilers? So I'm not as big a hockey fan as you. Did the Oilers lose last night? Are they down 2-3 for this series?
We are now down 2-1.
Oh, 2-1. Yeah,
But
sorry.
yeah, we've been in this situation before. And I'm pretty sure the general YouTube audience does not even know what we are talking about. So I'm happy to skip over some of the gory bits there, and just get through the about me here. You can find me on Slack within our Dev Edmonton Society Slack, which is kind of tailored for the Edmonton and surrounding area community of people who are curious about technology, or just like Chris and myself have been part of the tech scene for a long time. I'll need to update that profile pic because that was my old one, and I have changed it instead to a picture of a very stunned looking beaver, because why not? And I just want to be clear, as I do a presentation on Passkeys Primer, that I am not a security researcher, but that does not absolve me from learning the best practices. And I'll let you spend some time scanning through the XKCD comic about, security and whatnot. The reason why I put it up there is because as I go through a primer on passkeys, I'm prepared for questions either from Chris or from the audience critiquing the way that I use passkeys today. But at the same time, sometimes perfect can be the enemy of good enough. And I'm hoping that given what I'm able to share today, that I'm able to convince you that this, even though I myself don't necessarily use passkeys in a quote unquote fully secure zero trust perfect way, I still believe that it is way more secure than simply trusting software to securely store my passwords. All right, so what I like to do in a primer format is to use our 5 W's and an H. Now, I did kind of cheat a little bit and combine 2 of the W's, so I'll go from left to right here. Obviously, with the first one, I will be talking very briefly about what are passkeys. Then, we'll go into where and when should passkeys be used. In the middle there, I'm going to try my best to explain why should someone like myself use passkeys and learn more about them. And then I go into who should be using passkeys today. And if you are curious as a developer or an aspiring developer, how do I start to learn about the implementation of these passkeys themselves? So with the first section, what are passkeys? They enable websites to authenticate users without needing to manually enter a password or a code. The killer feature of passkeys is that they use public-private key encryption. What does this mean? This means that the server stores the public half. And why that is advantageous is if, as we are starting to get a little bit numb to, notice when data breaches occur, and there's a great website called haveibeenpwned.com. You can even, search for your email address on haveibeenpwned.com and see, if your account has been breached and if your passwords have ever been leaked out. If you use passkeys, you don't have to worry about rolling or, creating brand new passwords. Instead, what you can do is, if you're being very paranoid about it, you can always generate a new public-private key combination. And with passkeys, I'm basically storing the private half in whatever storage solution I choose, whether that be a password manager, a YubiKey, or even something like your iCloud or Google account. Now, I am going into a bit of some of the other sections, so I will simply wrap up the what section by also saying that when I am talking about passkeys, there were different terminologies that passkeys were referred to as while the concept and the standard was being formalized and being publicized. So sometimes if you see words like web authentication or WebAuthn, as it is sometimes shorthanded, or even FIDO2, these are technically referring to a piece of that overall passkey concept, but sometimes you will notice that people will use these older or sections of passkeys as terminology to mean passkeys as a whole. So over here, there is a simple graphic showing essentially the user flow of myself, or let's say even my mom, who is registering for an account, and what that would look like. And the surprising thing is, it doesn't look that different from, you entering a password or whatnot. However, the killer feature of this is my mom doesn't have to think of a password or remember. I should be using a manager to generate a more secure password than anything myself or my mom could come up with on my own. So, where and when should I be using passkeys today? This here, to Chris's point, in the past, there was a lot of different guidance. There are a lot of different ways to start to use passkeys. And for me, I like to consider myself as someone that tries to find the good enough instead of going straight to the perfect solution. And what I try to do is I recommend people to simply try the first experience that either your phone or your laptop or your desktop offers you. So in this screenshot here, I'm showing a mock-up of an iPhone where if I go to a SaaS product that allows me to sign in with a passkey, the iOS operating system will prompt the user to continue and share the passkey from their iCloud keychain with that web application or that mobile application. So Where and when, the big takeaway is try out whatever your device is offering you at the time, while knowing that there are pros and cons with that approach. And if how do I say this? I would say try try this new flow. If it's unfamiliar and you don't feel safe and you're not convinced by it, try it with a web service or a SaaS product where the stakes are relatively low. Currently, like, my banks don't support passkeys yet. That's why bank level security is kind of a joke in the software industry, but that's a totally different topic. I would say that, and I'll kind of go over it in the useful links section, there are simple websites that will help you test out what does creating a passkey look like? What does using an existing one look like without necessarily raising the stakes and signing into like my mortgage application or whatnot. Now, why should we be using passkeys? I mentioned that earlier in that what section, and I think the most important thing, once again, is despite maybe some of the confusion and just some of that natural hesitation to try something new, one thing I want everyone to understand is that passkeys mean that there are nothing for me, to manually generate, remember, and either type or autofill. Autofilling as well is dangerous in a way because let's say there's a keylogger installed on your system and you don't even know. That means that for someone like myself using a password manager and it's doing autofill, the keylogger is going to just slurp up my password. So using passkeys, none of that happens. No autofill happens. The user can choose as well where their passkeys are stored. So when I go through my demo of how I use passkeys in a practical manner that I believe is more secure than simply using just a password, there are ways to store passkeys completely separate from the password managers, completely separate from the iCloud keychain. But when you do that, you are increasing your security at the expense of the convenience. Lastly, one of the big major reasons to use passkeys is, let's say, the web service or the mobile app that you use discloses that they suffered a data breach. When that happens, attackers only get the public key half. And just by the nature of the term public, it means that I can show people the public key and they only have half of the entire public-private public-private pair, so that it's impervious to an attack if all the attacker has is the public half. Therefore, it is phishing resistant. Your private key never leaves your passkey storage solution, and it can't be entered into fake websites as well. So what do they mean by that? Let's say you're doing things that you're not supposed to do and reusing passwords across different websites. That is why haveibeenpwned.com is so useful as a website to go to, because if you are reusing your passwords, attackers who breach web services that are storing passwords, even if they're hashed and salted, they can take, once they've cracked that password, they can do what's called a credential stuffing attack. They can take your passwords and try it on many other popular social media platforms, web services, banks, and if you reuse your password from, let's say, your bank on your Facebook account, if they breach Facebook, they can now breach your bank as well if you did not change your password. The advantage of passkeys is because there's nothing for me to generate. I can generate unique passkeys for every service, and it's just one click away. I don't have to think about, what are the strings and numbers and letters inside the passkey. All of that is taken care of by my passkey solution. And therefore, server breaches can't compromise your private key. And let's say my private key was found, it can only be used for that specific website. So, I mentioned my mom earlier. Now, we're going to talk about who should be using passkeys. I believe that everyone who can should be using passkeys. Once again, the very first time you use it, it may not use your password manager if that's what you want it to do. iOS will, by default, take over and say, would you like to save the passkey in your iCloud? And if you didn't want that, you can always go into the settings and change those default settings. Is it a little inconvenient? Yes, but it is a one-time inconvenience. Now, this being a dev-focused talk, I did also want to mention that if you are a web developer or you're learning about how to build web and mobile applications, strongly consider introducing a passwordless authentication method, that being passkeys, for example, plus another form of authentication, whether that be, let's say, a one-time temporary link that gets emailed to someone and they have to tap the link before they're able to provide a passkey. Sometimes it's the other way around. As you continue to use more mobile and web applications, you are going to see different combinations of what each company, each product is, how they are applying that multi-factor authentication. Let's say you work at a company that has an existing product. I would really encourage each and every engineer to strongly consider at least speaking up within your teams about, hey, we really want to make sure that we are using the latest security and authentication mechanisms possible. Are we able to add passkeys as another form of authentication, as another factor? Because it might sound impossible, but I will, at the end, provide a couple useful links to libraries that can get you started. And you're able to use those libraries not just for a brand new SaaS product, you're also able to use them to integrate with existing ones too. Now, of course, there are a couple limitations when we are talking about passkeys today. And I don't just mean limitations from a technical perspective, I also mean that from just the user experience as well. The first one, which honestly, I wouldn't even call it a limitation these days, I would almost call it a requirement if you are aspiring or you are a web or mobile developer today. Passkeys will only function in a production level setting through an HTTPS connection. You can, when you're doing like your local development, try out the passkey flow using like an unencrypted, just plain HTTP connection to a local host. But that's a little bit of just kind of a cop-out as web developers when we're testing brand new changes on our local machine. So when we are delivering these to our customers as a web engineer or a mobile engineer, just know that passkeys, if they work on your machine, they may not work if your web or mobile service does not use HTTPS by default. So make sure that is enabled. Now, as an end user, as I mentioned earlier, iOS with its iCloud keychain by default will interject and go, would you like to save your passkey in iCloud keychain? And sometimes that can be frustrating if you're not fully in the Apple ecosystem. Or let's say, as I am, I use Android on a day-to-day, but right now I'm speaking to all of you on a Mac. If I saved my passkey on my Google account and I did not sign in to my Google account through my Mac settings or whatnot, those passkeys are not seamlessly synchronized across from my smartphone to my laptop. So that's why I mentioned that there is at first a little bit of vendor lock-in, but when you're trying out passkeys for the first time, I will show and demonstrate a couple simple websites where all you're giving them is, I believe, an email, which could honestly be a temporary email. Many different services exist for that. Just to test out, okay, as an end user, what is it like to create and then use a passkey to sign in to a very simple website without much information that I am not comfortable divulging. Now, I put in brackets there, if you don't want to be locked into that vendor, Microsoft, Google, Apple, you name it, you can always dig into your settings screens. It's a one-time frustration to then set your credentials manager. And I'll kind of show what that looks like, at least for me today. With a bit of that user experience novelty, sometimes just that brand new experience, sometimes it almost feels too good to be true because we're so used to having to either type a password or generate a password. As humans, we got used to having to jump through a couple hoops, and that nature of jumping through the hoops in a way misled us into thinking, oh, the more hoops I have to jump through means I'm more secure. Sometimes passkeys with just like how few clicks, how few taps you need to do in order to create and use one can almost be very jarring and shocking in a way where it causes us to go back to using passwords. But when we do that, it again gets into those limitations, right, of phishing attacks. If the service that you stored the password with gets breached and you reuse those passwords, well, credential stuffing attacks are going to let that attacker log into many other different websites. And they could even create a fake looking bank website that convinces our parents or our relatives to enter passwords into a convincing looking form to log in. All of these problems, once again, even though the user experience novelty of passkeys feels too simple to be true, it is more secure than some of the older ways of authenticating, like passwords. Now, the last one, though, and this is one thing I sort of alluded to with the XKCD comic, is even with passkeys, even if you are to store your passkey on a physical piece of hardware like a YubiKey, all of this is still not, it's still pervious, to social engineering attacks. Let's say someone, a state-sponsored, group of people jumped out of a vehicle one day and just wanted to jump me, and they knew I had a physical YubiKey. There's really little that I can do about that. At the same time, someone could also, and this can sometimes happen when you're crossing borders and you're speaking with the border agent, sometimes they require that you unlock your phone before you're able to cross the border. When that happens, is that a social engineering attack? You could perceive it that way, but the point I'm trying to make is that you, as the user, are still accountable for what is your risk appetite for where you are storing the keys, and how am I protecting it, and who am I willing to give up that either the YubiKey or unlocking of my phone or my laptop. So I just wanted to be open and transparent about the limitations of passkeys. At the same time, I do want to mention that they are still more secure than a lot of the different authentication mechanisms that we have today. All right, I was alluding to some simple demos, and now I'm going to quickly go through how to use passkeys. I think that there could be obviously multiple different talks, and I invite all of us to use YouTube now to look into some of these concepts as well. There are already vast number of resources, not just on YouTube, but even on, for example, the Django Passkeys GitHub repository, many different places that you can expand your understanding of passkeys. Now, let me just go into the first one here, Passkeys.io demo. And again, why am I using this? With Passkeys.io, all that I need to give them is an email address, and I could even use a temporary email service if I was not comfortable. But in this case, I'm okay with a little bit of shameless self-promotion, and I will use my corporate email address and hit continue. And over here, you will see it then says create a passkey. Now, it will also say, as I mentioned with one of my slides, is this passkey is only stored on my device, and it will never be shared with anyone that I am not comfortable sharing it with. So when I click on create a passkey, because my password manager sees that there are no matching logins for this site, I can save the passkey as a new login. At the same time, I can choose, luckily with my password manager of choice, it gives me that flexibility. If I don't trust my password manager, I can store it on a different device or even a hardware key. In this case, for simplicity, I will click Save Passkey as a new login. Now, you will see in this Passkeys.io demo that I have just created this brand new passkey, and it has by default named itself with my password manager. What's nice about this is how many taps did that require? I'd say I entered an email address, I clicked create a passkey, I then hit save in password manager. That was about three taps. That's all it took. And again, that novelty of creating a passkey can sound too good to be true, but I want to caution us to not fall back on using what we're comfortable with, creating passwords and whatnot, just because the experience is so much simpler. Now let me sign out of this account. How do I sign in? Well, it's just as simple as entering my email, or if I wanted to, autofill it, hitting continue, and it will then ask me, how do I want to log in? In this case, I'm going to log in with my passkey. You will notice now that my password manager will then suggest that I can use the passkey I just created, and I'll click that, and presto, I have signed in to my account, and with the magic of passkeys, the private key is stored on my manager. What Passkeys.io has is the public half, and if Passkeys.io is ever breached, all they get is the public half, and just by the nature of the term, you can't do much with that public half. It's public, it's okay. We don't make it public, just for funsies, but hey, if it does get out in the wild, I'm not worried. And if I truly was worried, that's okay. I can always delete that public half from this service and then fully delete my account if I wanted to. And if I was to try, the email address is unknown. So I still have the control as an end user of who do I trust, how can I manage my credentials. If I don't like it, I can always delete them. And in this case, it doesn't use the credentials I just created very quickly in this demo. Now let me flip back and wrap up with a couple useful links here. So once again, I invite us, if this is your first time learning about passkeys, welcome. I do invite you to try out these demos here. Passkeys.io is the simpler one. WebAuthentication.io is the one where you can get into a lot of the different bells and whistles. Behind the scenes, as a web or mobile developer, we do have control over how many different levers we want to pull when it comes to security versus convenience. There have been cases where web services will not even allow passkeys to be stored on quote-unquote software-based like storage solutions. That could be a lever that as a web or mobile developer, you can actually enable on your server side and say, nope, because of the nature of our product, we're not going to allow what I was demoing just now, which is storing a passkey in like a software-based password manager. That's all available. Further, I wanted to provide, and it's not an exhaustive list, just a starting point, a couple libraries, one for the popular Django Python web framework, one for Ruby, and another one for your JavaScript backend. Further, and I highly recommend going through these guides, they talk about passkeys and they really expand on what I was presenting today. And with Mozilla Developer Network, not only do they speak about the overview, they then go into the implementation of passkeys in not just kind of a JavaScript way, but also in a general method. Lastly, passkeys.dev includes a handful of other libraries in a bunch of other languages. It may look exhaustive, but once again, you are free to do your own research, evaluate the libraries and the tools that are available, and try them out, right? You get to make that choice. You have that flexibility. Lastly, there is an opinion piece, and it was written late 2024. So I believe certain elements have improved since then, but as just sort of a level set, passkey technology is elegant, but in late 2024, at the time the author did conclude it was most definitely not usable security. And I'm hoping that with this presentation and with the demo that I provided, I have shown since that late 2024 piece how much better the user experience has gotten and how our understanding of passkeys has also evolved. And I wrap up here by once again reminding us that perfect can sometimes be the enemy of good enough. And so when we are trying to convince ourselves, despite all the limitations of passkeys, to use passkeys, I would still say try it with a service where the stakes are low. Try it with what your operating system experience by default offers you. And then from there, that's just your starting point. You don't need to hold yourself to that experience. For myself, after I went through this experience and I realized, wait, I can't sync my iCloud keychain with my Android device practically, I made the trade-off decision to have more convenience, slightly less security, and use Bitwarden as my solution to synchronize not just the passwords, which I'm trying to use less and less of, but also storing my private key half of my passkeys. So with that, I'd just like to wrap up by showing the useful links again, and thank Chris for inviting me onto SaturdayMP.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Aaron. That was great. For those who don't know, Aaron did this presentation live because he runs a local Python, Ruby, JavaScript meetup here in Edmonton. And he did it live, but unfortunately I couldn't make it that day. So it was one of my selfish reasons for inviting him to the video here so that I could I could get my own personal presentation from him. So thanks, Aaron. That was really great.
Yeah.
I do have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we'll leave you sharing your screen for now, and if need to, I can share mine later.
For sure.
But I guess one of my first questions is, so when you log on to a website, do you create a private key for each different website? Is that how that magic happens? You don't have like one private key, like SSH oftentimes, you just create one private key on your laptop or whatever and just use that.
Right.
And over and over again. But you don't do that for passkeys, right? Every website gets its own private key, or what's the deal there?
So if you could see my webcam right now, you see my finger wagging because some developers and that's how I was using SSH before. But to be clear, it is more secure to create a separate private key for every server that we connect to. It's a bit of a cop-out as engineers for us to reuse the same private key and then put the public key half on all the servers we want, because by doing that you're defeating some of the advantage. Actually, you're defeating quite a bit of the advantage of public-private key encryption. Even with SSH, and I'm not going to show my SSH config, but you can have a .ssh /config plaintext file where for each of your web services, I actually point, client A dev server at this Aaron's private SSH key. And by doing so, if let's say someone was to get, the private key for that somehow from my system for that server, well, they can't reuse that private key and authenticate with, the staging server of my other client because I use completely unique private public key combinations, even for SSH. Now, bringing it back to passkeys, why I really like passkeys is Bitwarden, my solution, generates a unique pair for every service that I use. So that means, again, why is it phishing resistant? It means that, again, server breaches can't compromise the private key. If someone was to get one private key, that one private key only works for that one website or that one service that my password manager generated it for.
Yeah, but if someone gets a hold of your device and gets where all your private keys are stored, you're kind of in trouble anyway. But
Yep.
there is a separate, so you get a unique private public key pair for every website you visit. So
Right.
if someone does hack whatever, Acme Inc., and they get your public key there, that's no good because it's not like a password. It's not like you use the same public key on a different website.
No.
So it's not worth anything to them.
Correct. And to your point, passkeys are not impervious to social engineering attacks or, someone stealing my MacBook,
Yeah.
somehow getting through file vaults, and then somehow getting through either my Touch ID or the password that is on there for me to log into my MacBook. There are still it's not when I do this presentation, it's not saying passkeys completely replace everything. But what it can replace is our tendency to default to creating yet another set of passwords, autofilling yet another form. Once again, I don't think that perfect should kind of get in the way of what is a good enough approach to using a better form of authentication.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think your presentation did a good job of showing too, because that's what kind of put me off passkeys way a couple years ago whenever I first heard about them, is that they were tied to like a specific vendor, like
Yes,
Apple or something. Like I'm recording this on a Windows machine, a Windows 11, but I have an iOS like iPhone, and like I have a bunch of devices like a lot of developers
correct.
do of different
Yeah,
companies. And then it was like, whoa, so if I log into this site on my iPhone, how do I log into it on my Windows desktop? And it's like, oh, well, you can't, or you have to create this second passkey somehow. I'm not sure if websites would let you create a second account with the same email. Like, I don't know how that magic works.
that's a
So,
good question. And I'm noticing that different web services, different mobile applications, are handling this differently. I will say most of the web services that I use allow me to create multiple passkeys to sign into the same account. So what do I mean by that? I can have a passkey stored on my Microsoft account, but I can also at the same time have a different set of passkeys on Bitwarden. And for again, when I go to that login flow and I'm prompted, really what the web service is asking me as a user is provide a factor to prove it's either something you have or something you know. So with passkeys, it's something that I have. And it does not matter to that web service as long as I created a passkey on my Bitwarden and I have Bitwarden on my Windows laptop or Bitwarden on my Android device. I can use that passkey stored in Bitwarden in conjunction with the passkey that is also stored in my Microsoft account.
so how would you, like, let's say, because yeah, I'm using like Proton Pass, kind of same thing as
Yes.
Bitwarden.
Yes.
There's one passwords and various
Yes.
other ones that go across multiple devices. But let's say you didn't have any of those, and I'm on my Windows 11 desktop, and I log into Acme Inc. and I create a new account. It gives me a passkey. That's great. Now I'm on my iPhone. How do I log into that site, or how do I even get a passkey for my iCloud keychain? Like how do you even do that?
And that's where I believe with the opinion piece from Ars Technica, despite it being written back in 2024, I myself am still trying to find that practical way of transferring passkeys from different storage solutions. I
Oh,
will
okay.
say that is not like there. It's not very, based on what I've seen, and I do need to give it another try. Is the approach that does exist today is a device can actually reveal a QR code, or I think there's another implementation where it then uses Bluetooth to transfer the
Okay.
passkey information from your Android device to your Windows laptop. Now, all that being said, it can feel very clunky, and you kind of have to know that that exists. And that's why when I mentioned either on this video or even before the video, I can't quite remember, but I said that a lot of the passkey user experience, I recommend that you be on the latest operating system versions of of whatever device you are using. Because if, let's say, you're on an Android 10 device, I sincerely hope you aren't, but let's say you're on Android 10,
what's the latest version of Android?
I believe right now it's on Android 16, but
Okay.
don't quote me on that. Hold on, apilevels.com. So we're on Android 16
Okay.
at the moment with 17 on beta. All that being said, the transfer of passkeys between devices, again, if you're signing in on, like your Android phone, but the credentials are on your Windows laptop, I believe the standard and like the FIDO2, I think there's sort of there's an alliance or a like working group that is defining like the FIDO2 standard, which kind of underpins passkeys. I will be really honest. That is where it's a bit of a limitation of my understanding. But again, I think it's still a valid criticism that this opinion piece written back in December does talk about. Which again, at least for me, to bring it back to a practical, 2026 era way of like how to use passkeys, I would try these demo websites. I would use just to kind of get your feet wet into like, what does it look like? What is the user flow? Try it with your system defaults, and then kind of ask yourself like, was that convenient? And if it isn't, try not to, I guess, default to going back to the old ways of using passwords. I recommend going into your device settings and setting what is your like default credentials manager. Now, again, if you're on Android 10, I don't think this is possible. If you're on like iOS 13, probably not possible either. But once you're on iOS 26, Android 16, Windows 11, Mac OS, I think starting on like, I don't know, just something recent for Mac OS, you are able to actually set what, either is it iCloud that pops up first, or is it 1Password? Is it Proton Pass?
Yeah. And because you were talking about your mom too, and I keep thinking about like my dad and stuff like that. And I would just wonder if they would get burnt because they would just use their one laptop to log into everything. They drop the laptop, it breaks. Now they have to log into their whatever, Gmail or whatever again. They have to use one of their backup logins because they didn't bother to sync their keys anywhere else probably, right?
Yeah, and turning it back to myself, that's why I made the trade-off for more convenience over like strongest security, and I opted to store my passkeys in my password manager, which let's say, I hope it never happens, knock on wood, but let's say I do, my laptop gets run over, that's okay because Bitwarden has synchronized the passkeys across all of my devices.
Yeah, and again, that's why I started using. When I started experimenting with keys, I used Proton Pass.
Right.
But again, I need those, because they install on all the devices. And I only have a couple accounts with passkeys set up on them.
I think the most this also depends because I've noticed like passkeys is still a relatively new technology, and where I'm going with this is even companies like Facebook. I use passkeys on Facebook today, but I've also noticed like during certain times of the day, it could just be a buggy deployment on Facebook's side. Sometimes Bitwarden just doesn't pop up, or it does pop up. I provide the passkey, and the Facebook webpage doesn't proceed past. And again, these are the criticisms from the 2024 talk. But again, perfect can become the enemy of good enough. And I do hold out hope that with these working groups, with more people learning about like how to use passkeys, the demand for passkeys is going to then ramp up the level of care, hopefully, from companies like Facebook to then say, hey, the critical path here is to test our authentication flows. And we can't just take the simple path of using a playwright end-to-end test and only testing passwords. To me, it's trivial. We already, as web developers, have the tools like Playwright, Maestro, Selenium. If you're still on that, good luck. But we have end-to-end testing tools that help us as web developers validate our critical flows. And I don't think that there is any more excuse to services not fully supporting a seamless passkey experience, no matter if you're accidentally using iCloud keychain for the first time. Because again, I want us all to try something out first. And then when you understand the limitations of it while the stakes are low, then reflect on your use case. And my use case is I have an Android phone, I have a MacBook. It's not practical today to have a QR code show up from my MacBook so that I use my Android phone and scan the QR code to then authenticate with the passkey stored on my iCloud keychain. So therefore, I then said, well, Bitwarden can store passkeys, and I said, I am willing and comfortable with that trade-off of convenience, while knowing and fully knowing that no, it's not. It makes me more pervious to social engineering attacks. It means yes, there is a master password for my Bitwarden, but even Bitwarden itself now has multi-factor auth. No one can just simply enter the master password and unlock the vault. Bitwarden then itself uses a second factor and then emails a magic link that then someone needs to then breach my email, right? And then click on the magic link. So now it definitely sounds a little scary and a little complicated, but I do just want to, again, get back and simplify that, the recommendation of give whatever your device, give it a try, see what your devices do today. If you're not fully in one ecosystem, like you're not, an iPhone and a MacBook and an iPad user, okay. But hey, if you are, by default, in Apple's opinion, they think they're doing you a service by storing your passkeys in iCloud keychain, right? It then syncs to the cloud. So for my mom, when she's using her iPad and her iPhone, and she stores the passkey in her iCloud keychain, if she loses her iPhone, she has not lost the ability to sign in with passkeys on her iPad thanks to iCloud keychain.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah, I like your suggestion too of just trying it on a low profile website, like not your bank website, like maybe some store you've only bought one thing from or something.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, the other interesting thing I always find about the security stuff is it's always the weakest link, right? And pretty much every site has a big fat forgot your password button on there, which just bypasses anything. Any other security you've set up that forgot my password, maybe it'll just email you and not even use your passkey or something, depending on what service they have set up.
Right. And it's funny because while I am not a security researcher, it's not going to go into a rant, but it's like we all conditioned ourselves into thinking that passwords are the way. From a usability and familiarity standard, maybe. But if we're talking about security, it turns out that the forgot password flow, Chris, is if you've used like one-time password login flows, that's exactly what the forgot password flow is. It's the exact same mechanism. And I would argue that those, forgot your if again, I'm assuming that someone implemented forgot password using a truly one-time magic link with a lot of randomized characters. Given that assumption, that's another like factor, a more secure factor to authenticate someone. But should it be your only factor? No, there should be two at least, right? Two-factor authentication.
Yeah, yeah. You usually need a bit backup, but like even Anthropic right now. Maybe it's just because it's familiar with. But sometimes I use VPNs and everything, but it's still every time I log into Claude, like Anthropic, it just asks me for. It says, "Oh, give me your email," and I give
Yep.
it my email, Anthropic my email, and then it says, "Okay, we've emailed you a link. Click this link," and then you're logged in. And I've noticed a couple other websites do that too. They don't even
Yes.
bother with setting up. Well, I'm trying to remember. So long ago, did I set up a
Yes.
password with Anthropic? Probably,
Probably.
but I
Probably.
haven't entered it or even a passkey in like
Right.
in
Right.
so
And
long.
that yeah, and a lot of services, not just Anthropic, are I think security is, and this is why I don't call myself a security researcher. Sometimes we debate the underlying technology, right? But to me personally, there is no debate that the underlying technology of magic links, one-time links, but even better, passkeys, is more secure than sharing a symmetric string, that being your password. And now, where I was going with that is security researchers, the ones that I respect more are the ones who don't just endlessly debate or bike shed about underpinning technologies. Security is also about usability at the end of the day. Is this practical and simple for my mom to use, for my relatives to use? Can I explain it to them?
Yeah,
And sometimes as engineers we are critiquing because that's part of our jobs. We're critiquing even, oh, this iCloud obviously is not going to sync to my Android device. You are correct, but are you going to now take that notion and say I give up on passkeys? Because then are you a security researcher? Sorry to be blunt, but it's, if you're to agree with me that the underpinning principle of public-private key encryption is better than encrypting a symmetric key and praying that there's no man in the middle of attack, right? Um, yes, you got me when it comes to the usability angle, but I would not take that and say, oh, it's time to give up. We can always then, at least we can lead by example, and we can dig into the setting screens like I have and flip my MacBook to, instead of using iCloud Keychain, use my Bitwarden as the first interface that pops up to challenge me as the user to either create a new passkey or supply one that already exists.
yeah, yeah. I think passkeys are good. I'm just curious. Yeah, they just need a better UI. That's for sure. That's kind of their big limitation. And then the other thing, I think explaining it to someone of an older generation or not as familiar with computers is a password something you can see and like write down and put somewhere, but a passkey is not something that you can like write down and put in your vault. I guess you could maybe print it off. Maybe that's what they need to do, print off your passkeys. But nobody's going to type those in because they're really long strings.
Correct. Yep.
So yeah, it's just this whole I don't know, ethereal nature of them really confused me at first too. But yeah, no, I think your presentation really is really helping answering my questions. Like I said, I have a couple accounts that I use passkeys for now in place of a password. It is kind of I don't know. It's about the same amount of clicking with the password manager because the password manager would just fill it in for me.
Right.
But the passkey thing, I just get a little dialogue that pops up. Like you showed in your example, it's very similar for the password manager I use. Just pops up. It's like, would you like to use the passkey for this? I'm like, yeah, sure, go for it. And then it logs me into whatever
Yeah.
site I'm in.
Yeah.
And then
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
even though, to your point, yes, from a usability angle, to me that's actually an argument for using passkeys because to the end user it feels the same amount of taps, but the underpinning technology, the public-private key encryption of it, makes it from a security angle more secure. the password manager, if we're sending passwords, if we're autofilling, it's still like typing, but typing very quickly a series of strings, and that is susceptible to keylogger attacks. That's and actually, then I've also heard, and it's a good critique is, well, if someone already has a man in the middle of attack, like, doesn't that mean that they can get your passkey? And I say, well, yeah, they got the private half. Now they got to breach the server and get the public half too. So it's not perfect, but it's actually still better than someone with a Starbucks free Wi-Fi hotspot with Wireshark, intercepting traffic. Because if in an autofill password autofill scenario, you just got, right? But with passkeys, because the we've actually split the key in half, you need to get both halves. That's not something we can do with passwords at all.
Right, right, yeah. Cool. And I guess I'll make one other observation. Is the other thing that confused me too at first, and I saw that on that Passkeys.io thing.
Yes.
It had this whole thing about like your biometric data will only be stored on this device, and I was like, what biometric data is it stored? Like, I was on my desktop, I was super confused, and then
Right.
maybe I'm a kind of a luddite because most people are on their phones, and I'm assuming they were trying not to scare people away that like, oh, we're not going to use your Face ID or your thumbprint. But I found that very confusing because I'm like,
Yes.
passkeys don't use any biometric data, but the biometric data is used to unlock your password
Ah.
manager or
Okay.
whatever too, right? Like that's
Oh
a
boy. There's oh boy. Okay. So, um, it's because of the way that I set up how passkeys are generated and then stored. So when they mention biometrics, it's because Passkeys.io is assuming that someone just has their like device default settings, and they're coming into Passkeys.io.
and when you say device, like you don't mean a desktop.
Oh, I can mean a desktop. So my MacBook here has a Touch ID button, right?
Oh,
Like
I
there's
guess a
there's an
lot of
actual
laptops
key on
do.
it.
Yeah, most of
Yeah,
my big honkin' desktop does not.
right. So again, yes, there's like this is where again there is that fair criticism of usability and like explaining, you know, like explaining like how to generate a passkey. I think like, this is where they could probably hire like a copywriter or designer. This is not really even like a web dev topic, but it's you are right, Chris. I did not use Touch ID or Face ID to generate that passkey. But why they wrote these terms is because it probably used my browser user agent string, derived that I'm on a Mac, and they just assumed that most people who go to this website have default settings. And if you have default settings, your Mac and or your iPhone or your iPad is going to use Touch ID or Face ID to then generate on your device. That is what they're trying to say with that flow. They will use your biometric information that stays on your device to create that private key, that random bunch of strings. But it never sends the Touch ID or the Face
Yeah.
ID like matrix of my face or my fingerprint to Passkeys.io. What Passkeys.io actually gets is the public key half of that like string. So we're getting way into the weeds, right? Of kind of like why did it say Touch ID and Face ID? And I'm hoping that my explanation can kind of scratch that technical itch while also conceding that we still have opportunities to improve from a usability standpoint,
Yeah.
how we communicate and how do we build the trust in all users in all cases to use passkeys.
And
And
then
I'm standing. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, and I was going to also ask too, because they could make a pretty bold claim that it's more secure than passwords and all current two-factor
Yes.
methods. But is that only if you keep your passkey on one device? Like you create a separate passkey for every device that you have? If you use a password manager, like I guess I don't understand how it's better than two-factor because a passkey is like something I guess, but it's
There
it's
could
not
be a bit of,
necessarily something that you have, like, you're not using two factors. As long as someone has any of your passkeys, they can
yeah.
log in. But with two
I
factor, they need
I
both of these devices, right?
I can see how this statement can be misinterpreted. I think what they should have said is better than all current, like if they just got rid of the word two factor, it would make it, you would probably be more convinced, right? Like here, let
Yeah,
me just
because
do them a
I've
favor.
had someone get a hold of my Gmail password.
Yeah, let me just
But
do them a
they
favor
yeah,
right
they could
now.
do the thing.
There we go.
They couldn't log in because I got some notifications from my 2FA.
Right.
But if
So
they got a hold of my private key,
yeah,
then I'd
yes,
be done. There would be no, like, you would still want to enable 2FA
yes,
with pass keys, right? You could do
yes.
both, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So you are correct. I think that statement could be misinterpreted, and I kind of did some work for free here,
For free.
right? I just to reinforce what Chris is mentioning, by using just passkeys, it does not replace multi-factor, two-factor,
Okay,
three,
okay.
six-factor authentication. But the underpinning of public-private key encryption is as an authentication method more secure than your symmetric key, which is passwords.
Yeah, that
What
I totally agree with. Yeah, go ahead,
and there
Steve.
could
Go.
be and there could be a totally different talk about like this, those 6-digit rolling codes, right, in your authenticator apps. How even those, what happens there is, I'm not an expert on how it necessarily works, but I believe that the server provides me like a random bunch of strings. Most of the time, that gets encoded into a QR code. And then that random bunch of strings is actually a seed value
Yeah.
that gets put into a pseudo random generator, which then gives us 6 digits that then we copy pasta. How is Passkey more secure than that? Well, I'm coming up with some hypotheticals here, and this is where, you know, if let's say the QR code showed up on, let's say I was working at a coffee shop, or I'm a university student and I'm working, just in one of the university buildings, and a web service says, hey, let's create, a 6-digit rolling code thing. Here's a QR code. At that point in time, like even a security camera on the ceiling of that university building could accidentally grab that QR code and bam, there's your seed value. And well, do I know who's actually captured that value? I'm not sure. The other thing too is the server had to send me that garbled string as either the garbled string or as a QR code. So there is data being like it's another like temporary symmetric value that hopefully is being sent through HTTPS, but that's still susceptible to a man-in-the-middle attack. Someone with Starbucks free Wi-Fi could create their own forged TLS certificates or whatnot, and if you're not careful, or you're on an older device that doesn't have all these different security mechanisms to double check, certificate pinning and whatnot. That's why I think I kind of did some work for free with this website, and I got rid of the words two-factor. No, to be clear, passkeys does not completely replace the small hurdle of doing two things to prove to a service, I am who I am, and I should be able to sign into my own account.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I do like it better because another vulnerability with passwords is you could just keep guessing them.
Right.
You just guess a bunch of try and
Yep.
brute force someone's password, but with
Credential stuffing. Yep.
yeah,
That's
with
why.
the private public key, that's a lot harder to do. So
Yep. Have I been pwned.com?
yeah, you can't see my screen, but I showed that earlier too. Yeah, this is a great
Excellent.
site.
Right. Because again, like if you're, I'm sure one of my, which I won't type, like one of my like throwaway accounts here is part of the pwned, accounts, and
Oh yeah, I guarantee you buy this.
right, and if we are to do that, like I respect the person who's managing this web service, but they couldn't create this exact same web service for passkeys. There's no like have I been passkey pwned.com because by the nature of it, the way that even with the default iCloud keychain flow or the Microsoft account flow or the Google, you know, cloud storage flow, all of these services using their UI purposely generate a brand new public private key pair.
Yeah.
And and again, I was kind of wagging my finger, Chris. Like maybe it's time to exit out. I should maybe do a magic clap or something. But even us as engineers should not be using the same SSH private key across our services, despite the argument of, well, someone can just steal my laptop. Yeah. Again, no authentication method is going to be impervious to a social or physical engineering attack, but I don't think that excuses us from doing a very trivial 2 to 5 minute what is it, the SSH, command line command to create yet another public private key pair and use your SSH config files so that does it feel like an inconvenience? Yeah, but I would also argue it is more secure. Is it going to completely absolve me of other best practices like multi-factor authentication? No, but I do think the debate is over when I say it's more secure.
Yeah. I think, if we can get people to use it, if they can come up with a nice user interface, I think passkeys would be the way to go. Well, cool.
If I could like wave a magic wand, it's when we set up our devices, right, and we're forced to go through some kind of an onboarding flow or like a transfer your Google data to Apple or vice versa. It's vendors are incentivized to keep you within their ecosystem, and there are good things, good reasons for that, right? Like, do I want to teach? I was able to teach my mom, but could I teach everybody how to install Bitwarden and get through that learning curve on all their devices? Maybe not. So there is some sacrifice in having like, here's the default, you're using iCloud Keychain because, hey, that is probably going to get more people to start using passkeys than here's the setup flow. Please choose your passkey or your credentials manager. And it's like relatives then go, what the heck is this? I don't know. And they may just hit the skip button. And now we've defeated, once again, as security researchers, right? It's not just about the underpinning technology. It's also about that user experience as well.
Yeah. I totally agree. Well, do you want to throw on your the contact us page there?
Sure.
And we'll wrap this up.
For sure. Yeah, I do realize that a lot of this contact information is more tailored towards the local Edmonton community. But
what do you have an email or a website where people can ask? Because people can ask questions in the comments below, and
totally,
you can answer them there. But is there another place people can contact you if they have future questions, or maybe they want to work with you? Where can they get a hold of you? You got an email or something?
I think I'm not making it easy for them. I kind of maybe briefly showed it in the demo itself. But yeah, I do run a software and leadership consulting firm called Saikyo Softworks. So hopefully if you Google that and I got the SEO correct, it shows up. But yeah, I'm happy, time permitting. I love to see the comments. I think that when I talk about passkeys, I will be really honest. Like, it's just a primer, but I also just want people to remember that despite the critiques, the criticisms, try it out. Try it out. Understand its limitations, but don't assume that just because there are limitations, and even I had to go to the Passkeys.io website and fix up their copywriting. Like, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to just try something new and then reflect on what its limitations are. And then, especially if we're web developers, we should at this point know how to dig into settings. And then when we go through that one-time inconvenience, my hope is that these inconveniences become less inconvenient over time. And even today, when I get past a certain learning curve, for example, with other technologies like Docker, way back when it was the new hotness, I was able to appreciate the advantages of Docker while knowing, okay, there are certain things that don't make it, completely, game changing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love your advice too about just trying things, especially with a low risk, like in a low risk environment or low risk site in this case. But yeah, cool. Well, thanks, Aaron. If people liked Aaron, they can reach out to him, and they should also like and subscribe and share this video if you found it useful. It makes us feel good, make people like the video, but it also helps the algorithm. Like if you found it useful, liking and subscribing, all the things just makes it easier for other people to find it. So that's the non-selfish reason why you should click the like button. The selfish reason is it just makes me feel better. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye for now.